I don't suppose, by chance, there's a second one of those?
Sea of Thieves just recently got released on the PlayStation 5, and I've been addicted to it. I released a first impressions review when early access launched, and I've been playing it non-stop since. And now that I have a ton more hours in the game, I have a ton more thoughts that I want to share with you guys. And that's what I'm gonna do. That's what this video is about. It's a review of Sea of Thieves on the PlayStation 5 in its current 2024 state, all from the perspective of a new player. If you watched my first impressions review, I'm probably gonna repeat some of that stuff here, but everything that I talk about, I'll be talking about in more depth and more detail now that I have proper footing in the game. So I'm going to show you some raw gameplay. I'm going to get into the review, but first subscribe. I talk about video games all the time. I do day one reviews very often, other video game discussions, but I also talk about movies and TV shows. But anyway, let's talk about Sea of Thieves. So I'm going to break this review up into different sections covering different aspects of the game. For my first few days spent playing Sea of Thieves, I focused entirely on voyages. Voyages are going to be the majority of what you do in this game if you're more interested in the PvE aspects, especially if you're a new player. Voyages are broken up into different types of quests that you do for different factions. For example, Order of Souls is one of those factions, and they're the ones that give you bounty quests. When you start the game, you'll have one style of bounty quest unlocked, which will have you travel to a random small island and defeat one named enemy and then deliver its skull for coin and reputation. But once you do that enough times and you earn enough reputation for that faction, you'll unlock a higher level quest from them, which will have you travel to a larger island and defeat 3 named enemies and deliver all 3 of their skulls for even more coin and yes, even more reputation as well. And again, once you level up more within that faction's ranks, you'll unlock even more quest options. And it works the same exact way with all the other factions as well, like the Gold Hoarders. Once you start the game, you only have one quest for them unlocked also, which is go to a small island and dig up one small treasure. But just like the Order of Souls, once you level up within their ranks, you'll unlock different quest options that'll send you on even bigger and grander adventures that are higher risk, but they're also greater reward. Other faction voyages will have you collecting and delivering animals or hunting and fishing, and each faction has its own leveling system and its own unique set of rewards that you unlock as you progress. Rewards are usually cosmetic stuff like outfits for your pirate or cosmetics for your pirate ship or different skins for your weapons and your lantern and your compass and stuff like that. You'll still have to buy all of these rewards with in-game currency after you unlock them, which I think is a wee bit lame personally. I think the game would feel a lot more rewarding and I'd feel even more motivated to do these voyages if you were just rewarded with this stuff outright instead of being rewarded with the option to unlock them. But I can understand why they did it this way, to extend the gameplay, extend how long we play it. It is a live service game after all, and these voyages and the structure of them are the most live servicey aspect of this game by far. I like doing them, but I'm not gonna lie to you, these are designed to be busy work, to eat up a lot of your time, to grind. They are more or less just different versions of fetch quests that you do over and over and over again. And if that doesn't sound appealing to you, which I would totally understand if it didn't, you're gonna dislike one of the core aspects of this game, especially if you're a new player. But for a live service game, I really like how its core questing is set up and structured. I actually think the way that it's presented to the player is better than most other live service games that I've played. The way quests give you XP, which unlock other quests, the way the shop and unlockables work, I just find it extremely streamlined and I find it extremely satisfying. But overall, I did enjoy doing these voyages. I had fun following treasure maps, kidnapping pigs, and hunting down bounties. It hasn't gotten old or stale for me yet, but I can see myself abandoning this aspect of the game eventually, but probably not until I have at least 100 hours spent in the game, and even then, it's just as likely that I'll continue to do them for as long as I play, because again, I like doing them. But I'm curious, if you're a veteran player watching this video, tell me, do you still do voyages? And if so, why? Is it still rewarding for you, or do you just like the concept, gameplay, and the busy work aspect of Sea of Thieves?
Must think I'm a fool, bro. Must think I'm a fool, bro. Oh, shit. We got 2 of them on here. I'm a fool!
Then after focusing on nothing but voyages for my first few days of playing, I decided to swap things up, and I instead focused entirely on the more random, free roam aspects of the game, which for me included hunting down other players online, really testing out the PvP aspects, trying to roleplay as a pirate as best I could, along with some random world events that I just happened upon. And I have to say, I'd be lying straight to your face if I told you that I did not think Sea of Thieves had some of the most intense, heart-pounding, engaging, and rewarding PvP in any game that I've ever played. PvP is where this game shines the absolute most. There's something so satisfying about sailing on your ship, looking out on the horizon with your spyglass and seeing another player's bitch-ass sails out in the distance, and you start sailing after them, trying to chase them down, and it's clear they start to notice you, and them being spineless cowards, they try to avoid you and sail away, but with some precise navigation and maneuvering, you manage to cut them off or ambush them when they think they're safe, and you just start railing into them with cannonball after cannonball after cannonball, maybe a firebomb or two just for good measure, just to spice things up just a little bit. And it's even more satisfying when you manage to board their ship and slaughter them where they stand, and then you make off with whatever treasures they worked really hard to earn, treasures that probably took them hours to work for. I love it. It really brings out the sadistic pirate that I had no idea lived deep down in my soul. It's brilliant. The PvP aspects in this game is so good, and it's worth the price of admission alone. Actually, I have to be honest with you guys, I've never won a single skirmish or battle with any player online ever. I absolutely suck at the PvP in this game, but rest assured, everything I just said is true. It's intense, it's satisfying, it gets your blood pumping and boiling and rushing to all parts of your body simultaneously, but again, I suck at it. I have gotten better though. I continue to get better and better with each new encounter. I now manage to land quite a few cannon shots, and I'm starting to hold my own when I'm in sword battles and gunfights, but I'm far from good at it. I have been playing through this game with one other person. We are a crew of 2, and I often find PvP to be a bit of a struggle with just 2 people, because if your ship gets damaged, one person has to manage the repairs, while the other steers the ship to make sure you don't hit rocks and take more damage, which means there always comes a point in combat where we are just trying to stay afloat, and neither of us is really available to actually use the cannons and attack the enemy player's back. Meanwhile, practically every crew we've come across has at least 3 people on board, which means they are just doing endless repairs, steering, and attacking all at the same time. And I know, we just have to get good, practice more. We are currently noobs, we're pretty new at the game, but if you play with a crew of less than 3 people as a new player, I think you're gonna find PvP to be quite difficult. And if you're a player of 1, if you plan on playing this by yourself, not only in terms of PvP, but pretty much every aspect of this game is going to be quite challenging and quite boring, honestly. But I am open to tips and advice. The comments are open. If you're an experienced player, tell me the ways that I can get good at PvP. And then world events. There's quite a few of them. You can tell if there's a world event available because there will be something weird in the sky, like a giant skull cloud, or a giant pirate ship cloud, or a slightly different giant skull cloud. And honestly, I haven't done many of them yet, but that's by design. I like to happen upon these world events accidentally to make the world feel more random and rich with possibility. And in my opinion, when I do that, it makes those world events wicked exciting, and in turn makes the random exploration more exciting itself. Like one time, me and another random ship got caught up in a fleet of ghost ships, and I watched them absolutely obliterate this random poor innocent dude after they had already destroyed my ship. And then another time, me and again a random ship online were hunting each other down, and then a megalodon popped up and started stalking the both of us. Then after focusing on PvP and all the randomness that Sea of Thieves has to offer, I decided to do a complete 180 and try one of the Tall Tales. Tall Tales is where you'll get this game's story-driven content. Here is where you'll find the majority of the lore, world building, and the characters that this game has to offer. But I gotta be honest, I didn't put nearly as much time into these Tall Tales as I wanted to. I wanted to have completed at least one full Tall Tale before I released this updated review, but most of the time that I went out on my ship with the full intention to focus entirely on story stuff, I got distracted by other players or some sick-ass loot. But I did put enough time into them to give you guys my rough first impressions on the first Tall Tale, and based on what I've experienced, I love them, and there's a realistic chance that they may end up being my favorite thing about this game come the end of the day. The first Tall Tale, the one that I spent some time with, has a pretty interesting story so far, and it has you hunting down old sunken ships and lost chests, and has you find clues and unravel mysteries about the main narrative, and I had a lot of fun doing all of that so far. From what I've experienced though, it doesn't really change up gameplay yet in any deep or meaningful way. It still has you solving riddles and looking at maps and essentially doing fetch quests again, but the reason and motivation for doing them is a lot more engaging than when you're doing them for voyages. And also, a lot of the time it requires you to think and problem solve a lot more than you do when you're doing voyages. For example, when you're doing a voyage, you'll often get a map of an island where the item you're looking for is located, and you just look at your world map and figure out which island it is by comparing the two drawings. But in Tall Tales, you'll get vague hints and somewhat mysterious directions, and you'll have to use your brain power and hope you're going to the right place. The game doesn't really confirm if you're on the right path or not until you have the desired quest item in your hands, and to me that's so fun and so much more satisfying and rewarding. And I cannot wait until I get to the Legend of Monkey Island Tall Tale. That one looks like it's gonna be a blast, but even more so, I can't wait to play the Pirates of the Caribbean story missions. I love the Pirates of the Caribbean universe, and I'm so excited to see that crossover with Sea of Thieves. But it's absolutely worth knowing you can play these Tall Tales in any order that you want to. I'm just choosing to play them in release order, but I've also read if you want the overall narrative to make the most sense, you might want to play them in release order, but it's not at all required. Now, some other points that I think are worth mentioning about Sea of Thieves: combat is far from great. Combat actually leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion. Not ship combat. I actually think that's great, but hand-to-hand sword fighting and gunplay I find to be one of the biggest letdowns in this game, especially in the PvE scenarios. It often feels like the timing of sword swings is a bit awkward, and most weapons' rate of fire and reload times feel a bit too artificially restrictive in my opinion, and when you're fighting enemies with swords it never really feels like you're making contact until they die, but that's such a minor thing in the grand picture of Sea of Thieves. PvE doesn't happen too often unless you prioritize bounty quests. And once you do it enough times and you know how to work around the awkward feeling, it does start to feel better, but it's never gonna feel great. Also, I've said this in my first impressions review, and I've said it once in this video already, but I think it's definitely worth saying again. If you're a solo player, I genuinely can't imagine you'd have much fun at all in this game. From combat to sailing, to looting and exploring. This game is 100% designed to be played multiplayer with at least one other person. So make sure you have someone to play with, or be open to joining open queues and random people online, and especially use your headset if you do that. If you're insistent on playing this game solo, I honestly think you're gonna regret spending the money. But yeah, I've just been absolutely in love and addicted to Sea of Thieves, and I don't like giving into recency bias, but this may end up being one of my favorite multiplayer-centric video games of all time. Ask me again in a year. I just love being in this world so much so that I bought this book just so I could be in the world even more. And I have this other book ordered, and I would definitely buy this board game if I had anyone to play board games with. Anyway, enough of me talking. I want to know what you think of Sea of Thieves. Whether you're a new player or a veteran to this game, let me know in the comments. What do you think of Sea of Thieves? Are you enjoying it? Do you think it's lackluster? Are you somewhere in the middle? But anyway, thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far. Once again, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and yeah, I'll see you guys next video.